Hi, everyone. My name is Jimmy Simpson Jr., and I am super excited to be hosting our Listen Live this week. Let's see. Looks like a few folks might be joining us here in a little bit. But for those of you that do not know me, I am a member of the Listen for a Change team, and I've been with us since almost the beginning in our inception. I am a founding board member, a story coach, and the local MC for our story hours here in San Francisco for our in-person story hours. If you are somewhat new to Listen for a Change, before we dive into our story today, we are a nonprofit based in the Bay Area, and we are really just attempting to, break the cycle of discrimination by empowering voices using personal storytelling. Our Listen Live events, which some of you are on now or will watch later on, they are our weekly story hours on Instagram where we feature a storyteller, a live storyteller, to share a story of their life that in some way defines who they are, but that they may not get to share on an everyday basis. And so some of you are obviously watching these live now, but they'll also be on our Instagram page later, on Facebook, and also on YouTube. And I'm super excited today to have my friend and former colleague, Danielle Duga, join us. But before she joins on, I wanted to do a quick rundown of our story half hour that we'll do today. So our common ground rule that I want us all to have in this Listen Live setting is to really put a pause on yourself. So what we want you to do then is to really practice authentic, judgment-free listening. And what we mean by that is that you don't have to agree with everything that your storyteller says, but instead just really accepting it as their truth and their own valid experience. We also ask that you support and appreciate our storyteller, Danielle, and our future storytellers. This takes a lot of courage and vulnerability to come on and tell your story, whether it's live or whether it's being recorded. So keep those comments positive. This is a safe space for our storytellers. And of course, as we go through, if you have any comments or questions for our storyteller, please share them with us. So we will have time for a Q&A at the end. So go ahead and type those into the comment section. So with that, I want to do just a little quick intro of our storyteller, Danielle. So Danielle is always learning, always asking, and always seeking to understand. She is a proud mixed-race New Jersey native. Danielle has shared her story at the Oakland Women's March, the California Museum's Unity Center, and the Stanford Graduate School of Business. She leads with her head, follows her heart, and knows a lot about intersectional identity, science education, leadership development, and TV. Danielle is currently pursuing a joint master's degree in education and business at Stanford University. And I'm so excited because today she is going to be telling her story titled Breaking Down Transformation on what a chrysalis, a breakup, and business school have in common, and the messy personal process of change. And so, since this is my first Listen Live that I'm hosting, I'm going to attempt right now to bring Danielle into the room. She should be coming on here in just a second. There we go.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Hi, Danielle. How are you?
I'm good, Jimmy. How are you?
I can hear you. Let's see.
Perfect.
I am doing well. It's so good to see your face.
Likewise. It's been a while.
And it looks like we've got people who are already super excited that you are with us right now.
Yes, I can see and feel
and
love.
so, yes, good. Well, one thing I want to wish you publicly a belated happy birthday.
Thank you. Yes. Officially turned 31 a couple days ago.
Yes,
So.
you are welcome. Yeah, and I saw you share a birthday with one of our other mutual friends, Lisa, and you all were doing some wonderful things on Instagram. Can you tell me a little bit about like what you raised and how just amazing your network is?
Definitely. So Lisa and I are both born on June 10th, and we've had a shared birthday celebration together for the past 2 years. And we want to continue that tradition this year, even in quarantine. So with the Black Lives Matter movement and everything that's happening right now in this country, we wanted to raise money and awareness for Black-led nonprofits specifically, and really focus on nonprofits whose work that I was familiar with based on my leadership development work and capacity building. So organizations that were close to my heart and part of our larger network, though they might not be the organizations that you hear about on your day-to-day basis or that are necessarily receiving some of the large swaths of donations. They're a lot more grassroots and local and community-based. So we picked 3 organizations. They are called the Blackout Collective, Spread the Vote, and Black Women for Wellness, and wanted to have 3 different angles on how we can support the Black community through their wellness, through protest, through joy, and through voting and voting rights. So we got to raise, through our networks, we got to raise over $6,000 at this moment in time. We don't know that our sort of fund closes today, so I'm not sure what the final amount will be, but we have the opportunity to triple that, get like 2 times the donation, so triple everyone's dollars through my friends who are working at Apple. So that is going to be the end goal. The money will be sent their way shortly once the fund closes. And yeah, just so grateful and amazed by the community that we have around us for showing up.
That is so awesome. When I saw that you posted that it was tripled to like $18,000, that is truly incredible. Well, what for folks who don't know, Danielle and I, we are friends and former colleagues. She was one of the like first 10 people that I met when I moved to San Francisco working at Education Outside, where we were both teaching science out in the garden. So it's so awesome to reconnect here. And Danielle, you are on the East Coast right now, right?
Okay. Sorry, you cut
Oh.
out for me, but I just fixed, I think the internet should be good. So could you repeat whatever you said? I heard we worked together
Yes, I
as
was just
first 10 people that we knew.
yes. And then I was just saying that you are not in actually the Bay Area right now. You are over in New York, right?
Yes, so I am currently a graduate student, as you mentioned earlier, and we had sort of the online experience for the past quarter. So I actually came back to where my family and friends are, which is the New York, New Jersey area, to be close to home. They are all essential workers, and so I've been really like in the middle of the coronavirus fight and pandemic here. So it's really important to me to be as close to them as possible during that time.
Yeah. Well, I am so grateful that you have joined us today. It looks like Lisa, birthday twin, also just joined. So hi, Lisa. We
Yes.
gave you a little shout out earlier. So with that, I am going to just kind of sit back. I wish there was a way for me to like minimize myself on here, but I really am just super excited for you to share. Oops. That's not what I want to do. For you to share your story with us. And I'm just going to sit back, be an observer, just like the rest of our audience, and let you take it away.
For sure. Thank you, Jimmy. Just to provide a little bit of context, so this is a story that I got to tell with and at Stanford University as a little part of the introduction. I've switched it up, but it's really about my journey over this time and over the past couple of years. So you'll hear about that, and you'll see some of the framework and understanding of why I chose sort of the path that I did at this moment in my life. And with that, I'll begin. So I came to Stanford to explore transformation. It is what matters most to me and is a word that has caused me as much pain as it has pride. I'm not alone. Society is as obsessed with transformation as I am. We're fascinated by the before and after, who you were then and who you are now. On Instagram, not too long ago, it was the 10-year challenge. In nature, it's the caterpillar turned butterfly. I decided to spend my career facilitating change in education. I wanted to ensure that organizations changed to embrace marginalized voices, that education made space for the unheard. I actually met Jimmy working for a place that got to transform yards of schools. They picked up the asphalt and transformed them into lush, living laboratories of greenery. We used to run around as science educators, working with 6-year-olds as they held up magnifying glasses, trying to find all the bugs that were in across the soil, which they were just terrified of months before. It was transformation before our eyes. We could see behavior change. With that, I expanded my work, working for organizations that created transformative experiences while they were simultaneously undergoing drastic internal change. Things like scaling local to national, transitioning CEOs, infusing equity and inclusion. I had a front row seat to transformation of all kinds. It's shown me that even the experts still struggle to create and define transformation. And that's the thing. Do any of us really know what transformation means when we say it? Because if we want to change lives, organizations, and the world, we need to start defining how we do it. I want to end the before and after dichotomy and shift us from thinking of transformation as an outcome to a process. And there's no process more famous, no transformation metaphor more cliched than the caterpillar to butterfly. I actually love this metaphor, and as a former elementary school science teacher, I am very familiar with it. The caterpillar to butterfly captures transformation's magic and mystery. Yet, what happens inside the chrysalis phase is unquestioned, unheard of, and untouched. And that's the mistake. We should be talking about the chrysalis, transformation's true hero. The chrysalis holds the key to how we can think about transformation. So let's take a moment and look inside, because what happens is absolutely mind-blowing. A caterpillar actually makes her chrysalis from the inside out. To prepare, she anchors herself to a home. It's usually a twig. She then bursts her head open to shed her skin. The underlying layer is the chrysalis. The chrysalis hardens to protect her. And with that, it camouflages with the outside world, with the hope that no one notices or disturbs what's about to happen. Inside the chrysalis, this caterpillar actively breaks down. She liquefies, turning completely into mush. The only thing that's left are her essential structures for breathing. Yet, even as mush, she knows how to rebuild. She rebuilds each step carefully. Her legs, her wings, the patterns on her body. When ready, she breaks free until finally she can fly. On the other side, she's still the same creature. According to science, this butterfly can still remember her time as a caterpillar. What she liked, what she smelled, what scared her. When caterpillars break down, they know how to create new, better versions of themselves. At every step of the way, the process is intentional, active, messy, and personal. This is how we can define transformation. This is the magic. And I've learned this firsthand. A couple years ago, I was going through one of my own personal transformations. I was ending a 5-year relationship, starting a new job, and learning to live in a new city. Feelings of trying to find myself were front and center. I was angry. I was scared. And I was surrounded by individuals that created transformation every single day. How do you do that? I never fully got that question answered, which is why I'm here, waxing nature metaphors and divulging my story of liquefying. We need to talk about the breakdown. I went through the same steps as this very hungry caterpillar. Step 1, I anchored to the San Francisco Bay Area and later Stanford. Transformation often happens in these immersive learning experiences because you're rooted in a place to do the work. For me, choosing to stay in the Bay was a scarier choice than running. But I moved from San Francisco to Oakland. Step 2, shed skin and form protection. I simultaneously switched jobs, moved, ended a relationship, and applied to business school. In many ways, my business school experience from application to today has been my chrysalis. Yet, I needed others to protect me. As Jimmy mentioned, it's my birthday week. And one of my closest friends reminded me this week that a couple years ago, I sent an email to more than 30 people, CC'd, not BCC'd, with the subject line, hang out with me. I needed friends. My parents had threatened to fly across the country to check in. And I knew I had people around, but I neglected them for a job, for a relationship, for a ladder. But it was only the beginning. Step 3, break down completely, except for your essential structures. I definitely broke. I sat alone and slept alone. I cried every single day. I screamed. And I don't scream. I laid out on my bedroom floor, my own version of mush. I was so lost. I chose to go for walks. Instead of sitting in my meditation room, which my office was lucky enough to have. But sometimes I just need to get out. And I would wander the streets of downtown Oakland. And folks would ask me, are you okay? I didn't have much of an answer. Step 4, thoughtfully put yourself back together. I found me. I started writing again, poetry mostly, and letters. I hadn't written in 5 years. I righted my wrongs and accepted that there were wrongs that I would never be able to right. I practiced balance, presence, and gratitude. I actively, intentionally changed for the better. Stanford for me was the scariest choice at this time because I had access to power, wealth, and opportunity that I could have never imagined. I wasn't sure if I could make that my home. But I wanted to try because at the same time, Stanford has this mission, the school that I'm at right now, to change lives, organizations, and the world. felt kind of aligned, so I leaped. And here I am. Step 5, break free, fly, and remember where you came from. To be honest, I'm not here yet. I'm in the messy, mushy middle. And I love being in my chrysalis. It gives me direction for when to say yes and no, and how to take care of myself. In the end, I only delivered one of my letters. I realized I need to write for me and find my voice. I did, however, share another letter to a large group of people at an open mic at an event called You're Going to Die. There's a lot of grief and loss present. It felt on the nose. I took the time today to share my story, another piece of it, because it's the way that I can prepare for what's next. So that's the process. And we can all prepare for what's next, because this is so much more than my transformation. It's why so many of us are here, to search for transformation, to welcome it, to facilitate it. Maybe we're all in the messy middle. As a society, right now, we have the power and process to be better. Because we can do more than change lives, organizations, and the world. We can transform them. But it won't be enough to repeat the words. We're going to have to break them and ourselves all the way down in order to build back up into something beautiful. Thanks.
Danielle, thank you so much for sharing that. You have many fans in the chat. In that, yeah.
Oh yes, it was following along for the commentary.
It takes, I mean, as I said in the beginning, it takes a lot of vulnerability to share your story on a platform like this, where you are just talking to a screen and you can't see who's watching and you can't see their expressions. But I also think it takes a lot of vulnerability and courage to really admit that you are still in the mushy middle. And I think that that is really powerful. I'm curious how, I know you've told this story before in front of a live audience at Stanford, but how did it feel sort of telling it again?
Yeah. So one thing I just like on like this platform, I will say it was really nice to have your face here, Jimmy, because it did allow me to have someone to react to.
Okay.
So like, so it made it less sort of like in the ether, what am I doing?
Yeah.
So I think that was one positive thing. But I did get to tell a version of the story 3 months ago, sort of right before everything shut down in this country. And I think for me, it was like really thinking about, like, I have always been thinking about transformation. I wrote my like applications on transformation. Um, One thing that I love to think about is just like what are other transformations that happened in my life. And for me, one of the most critical ones was just like, I would say like my first transformation, if you will, which is like understanding who I was, like what my racial identity means to me, what my religious identity means to me, and processing that. And I think for me, it was like this strange moment in time where I got to tell it right before we all knew the world was about to drastically change.
Mm.
And I think it's like, what does it mean to sort of be in your own chrysalis? And then kind of anticipating the world about to enter something where we just didn't fully understand what the scale of this would be. Um, so it's given me a lot of time to reflect over the past 3 months around like, how is the story relevant? How has it changed? What are the ways that we're all maybe transforming, or maybe we're all inside? And I think in some ways it was a little bit, it's amazing to hear the recall and just like remember what it looks like. Uh, and then also just like understand, like, I don't know where we'll be on the other side. And to know that that's a question that I think is on everyone's mind.
Hmm. Thank you. And so we have a question um, asking, can you tell us how you think about transformation from within versus from the outside?
Yes, I can, Toby. So I think I'll when I would like show up to Stanford, who has a mission, or Stanford Business School, which is graduate school of business, is what we call it, and whose thoughts are on change lives, organization, in the world. I thought I'd be able to like go to a place that would give me the answers. So it's like, oh, maybe they've like mastered this somehow. And even when I was working in like leadership organizations, that there was like a piece missing that I wouldn't know. Um, and what I think I've most come to terms with is like, I don't think anyone really knows this answer. And I think it's a word, it's sort of a buzzword that we throw around all the time. Um, I would say, however, that I think people talk about transformation and think of it as something on the outside and something that's like we can see or notice. And what
Hmm.
I think is actually really beautiful about transformation, how I would like frame this, is that like people may be going through something internally and nobody actually has any idea what's going on within that person. And I think that individual or that organizational transformation is like, I feel a little bit like the iceberg model almost, of just like we don't really know what's beneath the surface or below. And I think it's the piece that people forget and is missing. And so, like, a lot of the leadership I talk about is leading from the inside out and really understanding who you are and what that looks like and how you can sort of be comfortable and content with the person that you are before you can actually have this external success or transformation or whatever it is. And that would be the distinction that I'd want to make. It's like it's not that visible, and you should start with the inside.
Hmm. And I think so that right there is exactly why I was drawn to this story when I was randomly Google searching you to find your stories online, and your just the metaphor of the butterfly, and it's a transformation that we can see some of, but that chrysalis of what's happening on the inside is something that is just all internal and something that we don't actually know what's going on in there. So I really appreciate that. So you alluded to this at the end of your story, about how we as a society are in this like messy middle right now. And I'm wondering if you just could elaborate on that a little bit.
For sure. I I mean, I think like in some ways, just like I feel like there's like this like pre-corona, post-corona divide, and then also obviously at this moment in time with the Black Lives Matter movement um, erupting across communities beyond the Black community as like are like two sort of like visceral, visible ways that we can see and the transformation on outside that I think people have been working and fighting for within the in. Um, and so like the way I was thinking, I think like at least in this country in particular, there's been, so much divide. There's like the communities that are like multiple communities that are operating, coexisting simultaneously, but not together. And so like to see all of that happen, um, like there are different ways you can divide that, whether it's politically, socioeconomically, there's multiple versions of like data that you could look at. But I think what's been really fascinating about like seeing just that, thinking about that as the messy middle, and then and like understanding like what is the path forward, and then you add on all these extra layers of what's going on in the past 6 months that's been affecting globally our society.
Mhm.
It sort of like really, I was gonna say crystallizes as a different word there of like what's going on, and like heightens people's awareness to like. So I was thinking about this beforehand, and then I think everyone was literally shut down and like was forced to go inside, and you have to deal with yourself and
Mhm.
like figure it out.
Yeah.
And so like whatever that looks like. So I think there was like a lot of messy middle, but it almost feels like we were at the point of the breakdown, like in a society right now, is like how I've been viewing it. And like, I think some of this eruptions and some of the Black Lives Matters movement is like, how do you reform in a new way? And like, how do we do that? And those are the questions that our society is currently asking on every level, every scale, whether you're thinking about globalization to local and like what makes sense to who has equity and justice and like their rights in this to live and be in this world. And I think I'm really excited by it and like personally like invigorated by the fact that everyone's looking to change.
Yes, thank you. Um, and for those saying, please save the video. Don't worry, we will. It will be saved. And then if for folks in the audience, please, if you have more questions for Danielle, type them in there. We will ask. Um, One of the last questions that I have, so I know in your bio that I read before you came in, it says you know a lot about intersectionality. And I
Mhm.
know that you know a lot because you live it as a biracial Jewish woman, and all of those identities are so important to you. And but they weren't the focal point of this story, which the focal point was a breakup. And I'm curious if you can tell me more about, your decision in sort of crafting the story around your breakup.
Yeah, I am. So this was like a personal, like a cognizant challenge that I actually gave to myself to see what it would be like for me to tell a story where I was human in a different way.
Mm,
I think for me, all of my writing and all of the opportunities that I've gotten to like share my story or speak to a community. So you mentioned the Women's March earlier as like one example. They've always been grounded in what does it mean for me to make sense of my experience as someone who has a Black father and a white mother and Jewish parents, growing up in a diverse community. And what does it mean for me to appear and like present as a someone that people understand as a white woman in this world while simultaneously carrying generations of trauma on both sides of my family based on the history of oppression in this society and world. And I think like that rest has is was sort of like the inner work that I was doing, and if you will, the like personal breakdown that I first experienced. A lot of the folks that are on this call right now are folks that I grew up with, and they're ones that like witnessed it or got pieces of it from a as like from afar. But I think it was like a big personal turmoil and understanding for me to just understand and accept who I am and how I look and try to figure out like what privileges do I have and how do I use that for um, to advocate for unheard voices or to advocate for marginalized communities or for in this like Black Lives Matter and for the folks that for my family, for my heritage, and that so much of my work was surrounded by that, no matter what. That's the work I did with public schools. That was central to the work that I did with leadership communities around social change. And it will always be true to who I am. I think for me, I was really trying to figure out what would it mean for me to tell a story that could have other points for folks to relate to, where it wasn't just like using these identities as a way to change people's perceptions of me. And I wanted to understand what it would look like for me. And a lot of my challenge of going back to graduate school is for me to have all those identities just be part of my day-to-day experience, but um, maybe I'm not going to be the diversity and inclusion expert or like person that's like working on this as my career. Like, what if that's just something I can like do and offer to the world, um, where I actually can choose and pursue other passions? And I think because so much of my education and professional experience has been focused on who I am and how I show up, I wanted to like give attention to other points of joy and pain and sorrow and to see what that could look like for me. So it's an important transformation for me to accept that identity. It is my first one, and I'm sure there will be others, and it still affects me every day. And it's something I want people to know about who I am, but I also don't want it to be the only thing to define me.
thank you so, so much for sharing that. Um, in the chat, are there any other questions that folks have for Danielle? Again, I just see so much love for you, Danielle. Well, I want to thank you for joining us today. And we are going, for those in the audience and those who, Danielle is your first intro to Listen for a Change. We host stories like this every week, and we would love for you to join us next week as well. Make sure you're following us on Instagram. And Danielle, is there anything else that you want to add or say to any of the folks online before we log off here?
I think it's okay to be in the messy middle and embrace it, embrace the breakdown. That is what I would love to leave you with.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Danielle. So wonderful to see you. And thank you everyone who logged on. And you'll be able to see this video on our Instagram page in its whole very soon.
Thanks so much, Jimmy.
Bye, Danielle.
Bye.